So this man doesn't really need an introduction for this show, but he gets one anyway. It's Frank. How you doing?
Hello, what an excellent introduction that was. It was entirely factually correct. I'm very well. It's very nice to speak to you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's nice, but it's also terrible because we're doing it again on Zoom.
I know, and we have seen each other in person. And I think you and I both felt like the era of Zoom interviews had come to its natural conclusion. But no, here we are doing it again. But if I had to Zoom anybody, Simon, it'd be you.
I mean, you can lie. It's fine. I like it. I'll take it. But I do actually I have to start off on quite a negative because you've been perpetrating a lie for a few months now, and that is that no one hands out medals to monsters like me. Well, that's a lie because we actually have a Frank.
Oh, for fuck's sake! All right. Okay, fine. I'll go back and change the record. Thank you. That's very, very sweet of you. I mean, I still have the badge, of course, in pride of place. So now it will have a medal to accompany it. I feel very honoured.
Obviously, that joke would have worked a lot better in person, but
it would, wouldn't it?
We've got to try these things on Zoom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is still the world that we're living with. It works.
Yeah. And also, I've been interviewed, I think, for the last 8 years or so, and I've never actually asked you, where was the cheap Southampton bistro?
Oh, it was in Southampton. There we go. No, it wasn't a Pizza Express, but it was like a ZZ's or something. Do you know what I mean? One of those ones that's a bit like Pizza Express, but isn't quite.
The main reason we're talking was originally it was going to be to talk about the tour, but we won't go into that.
Yeah,
obviously, going to come back at a later date. But the album, we have a brand new album.
Yes, which we certainly do.
I've been listening to constantly for the last 2 days. And
excellent.
My favourite album of yours has always been Take Deck Heart, and I think it always will be. But this, I think, may take its place. I've become very obsessed. I've already got a favourite melody, favourite lyric, and a favourite song, and a song that I'm most looking forward to seeing live. Like, it's an incredible.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. It's interesting that you mentioned Tape Deck as well, because this album, among many, many other things, is my return to working with Rich Custy. And it's funny because basically when we made Tape Deck Heart, it was the first time I'd ever been like hardcore produced. Do you know what I mean? Before that, I made records with my friends, and I didn't fully understand what the process was going to involve. And also, Rich didn't really know who I was, and I'm not sure that he took me enormously seriously. And the end result of all of this was that I felt quite a lot like I'd been beaten up afterwards. And it took me quite a long time to make my peace with Tape Deck as an album. As a result, as much as I've always loved the songs on it, I came away from the recording process not sure that it was exactly what I wanted it to be, because it had changed more in the studio than any record I'd made before. What was cool about this time around was that Rich now knows who I am. He remembers, and respects me as an artist more, and I respect him as a producer more. And I also am aware of what the process of production can involve, both having been produced more myself, and indeed now that I'm working in production myself. And we just both came at it kind of like with, open hands. Do you know what I mean? And it was really cool because we were both pretty open to each other's suggestions. Also, we made it remotely, which was weird, but oddly focused. Rich was, me and the band were in a studio in Oxford, and Rich was in Vermont. And we moved on to American time to make the record, which is very strange, kind of getting up at like midday, 1 o'clock, and working until like 2 a.m. Yeah. And we had him on a laptop on top of the mixing desk on an endless FaceTime call. And we started referring to him as Holly, which I'm sure is the joke that you will understand. It's Red Dwarf, right? Americans don't know what Red Dwarf is. So we kept calling him Holly, and he was like, what are you fucking talking about? And that made it funnier, of course. But the thing about making a record remotely, which I was surprised to discover, is that there's just a lot less time for mucking around. Yeah. Quite often when you're making an album, you arrive in the morning and you show each other funny cat videos you found on the internet. for the first like hour before anyone presses record and anything. And there was just we couldn't do that. There was no point in doing that. So as soon as the call was up and running and the engineers were in place, because we were sending files internationally and all this bollocks, all this nonsense, excuse me. The end result was that as soon as we clocked in, we started working. And we just worked really, really hard. And I'm pleased with the end result.
Yeah, this is, like I said, it's in your top 3 albums of all time. And like
that's very kind of...
It's 100% the most honest thing I think you've ever put together. Every single track is just... There is the heartbreak at the core of it, or there is a story that you wanted to tell. Like, it is...
Yeah, I think the pandemic weirdly sort of helped with that, in the sense that like all of the kind of creative directives of this album, which broadly speaking are kind of going sonically harder and going emotionally rawer, got intensified by lockdown, because I spent more time working on this record than almost any record I've ever made. You know, in February 2020, I had maybe 10 songs, and I was like, I'll write 3 more, and then we'll go to LA. That was the original plan, and make the record, and you know, that'll be an album. In the event, I wrote 28 songs, rewrote most of those original 10 quite a lot. Yeah. And it was just kind of like, if we're going to go heavy, let's go heavy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think Non-Serviam would have sounded like it does if there hadn't been a lockdown. And I don't think that like some of the more kind of emotionally cutting songs would have cut quite that hard if I hadn't had more time sitting around at home just kind of going... Yeah. You know, I've finished Netflix already, so what am I going to fucking do? You know, and just stuff like, for example, talking about my childhood, or indeed where I went to school, for God's sake, which is a thing that I've studiously avoided talking about in public for a long time. But the thing I found interesting, the thing I realised is that me not talking about it, first of all, doesn't stop other people talking about it. Good Lord. And secondly, it means that I don't get a voice in the conversation. And I noticed in the last few years, as I got older, that, you know, I was privately educated. I mean, on a scholarship, fine, whatever, but never the social cachet goes with it. And people talk about it as if it must have been a wonderful experience for me. Now, of course, I appreciate the privilege that was involved in it. And indeed, that's my central political objection to private education conceptually, which stands. But it was just like, it's something that's like, hold on a minute. Oh my God, they think I had a nice time. Like I had a appallingly awful time. I tried to kill myself within a week of arriving there. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was a hugely traumatic experience for me going there. I hated every second of it. And it's like, well, if everybody's talking about it all the bloody time, then I'm going to talk about it too, because at the very least, I'm allowed to put my 2 cents into this conversation about me. You know what I mean?
And like I said, the album is really honest, and I loved it for that. You said like you rewrote a lot of songs. One of them, which I don't think had that much rewriting, because we saw it live in 2019 at the Wedge Rooms. You did a Get Loud for Nordhoff Robbins gig, and you played The Work.
Yeah. Yes. Well. So the work, though, the funny thing about The Work is that the original verse melody of that song comes from a piece of music I wrote when I was 15 years old, and which I rediscovered. And not even rediscovered. I was sort of knew that it existed somewhere, that I had this kind of song that I did years ago that had something to it. Yeah. But the overall thing was awful, because I was a young teenager when I made it, and I was listening back to it and just went, you know, the thing about, and I finally nailed it. It was like, the chord sequence and the melody here is great. The lyrics are god awful. So let's just take the good bits and work on the rest. And the other thing about that song is I wrote it. I was walking home one day, so I had the melody already sort of structured out, and wrote a set of words in my head, and came home, and it is a song for my wife, and I played it to her as a finger-picked folk song, and she thought it was very beautiful. We then went into the studio and cut it as a kind of driving punk song, and she was furious because my wife is not a punk fan, and she was like, "You ruined a beautiful song." But that's why on the deluxe version of the album, the finger-picked version of that song is on that, mainly to placate my wife.
But yeah, because that's actually my favourite melody. I love the fact you wrote it when you were 15.
Oh,
the album. The opening,
well, there we go.
The opening bit, the stretched vocals, I love that.
Thank you.
I just love that way it flows. Wonderful.
Thank you. It's very reminiscent of a band called Mineral, who were my absolute obsession when I was a teenager. So listening back to it, it was like, damn, I was listening to a lot of Mineral back then. But then that's one of the things of this record, though. I mean, an awful lot of the musical decisions on this record were a case of giving in to my first instincts in a way that I've made a lot of records, right? And like, you know, initially the first few records you work quite instinctively. But even so, I was experimenting with what was for me at the time kind of a different direction, playing more acoustic, folk, country, whatever you want to call it, music. And over the years, you try not to repeat yourself, you try and expand, you try and sort of complicate your musical instincts or whatever. And a lot of the time on this record, it was just a case of like, what would I do if I was in my first band and I'd just written this? What would be the thing that I would do before you're at that point where you're trying to second guess yourself? And just allowing myself to indulge those kind of punk, emo, hardcore kind of influences, which are so ingrained in the way I think about music. Yeah. And just having kind of breakdowns and build-ups and stuff like that, and it was just like, yeah, why not? I mean, and so many times in the past I've almost done that and then gone, oh, it's too obvious. And this time around it was like, let's do it. And I don't think that the end result is obvious. I just think it kind of has a more natural flow to it.
Yeah. So my actual favourite track on the album at the moment, favorite tracks always change, but this one we spoke briefly about it at Victorious because you did it in a couple of live streams. Wave Across the Bay.
Yes,
it's sensational on so many different levels. Obviously, it's written for Scott, and it's coming out as a single, so it's out now. On
yes,
the Prophets are going to try and change it, which is a charity set up in his honor.
Yes,
which incredible thing to do as well. But there's a line in the song which, as soon as I heard it, it's resonated with me in such a way that there must have been a moment just before you hit the water when you were filled with a sense of peace and understanding, with the wind in your hair and the light in your eyes, and when you realise you'll finally get that line, it's hit me like really hard. And I know music has such an impact personally for so many people, and I know your fans, there's thousands of stories of people where your music has had a huge impact on their lives, and this track I think is definitely gonna have a massive impact on people. I know it has with me.
Well, thank you.
When can you ever really think about, or the years you've been doing this and the music you've made and how that has had such a positive impact on people and the world? Can you ever really like comprehend that? That's like, oh, I've done that. That's me.
I have to work. I work quite hard not to think about it, because if I thought about it too hard, I would either disappear up my own backside completely, or I would terrify myself out of writing songs anymore. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like I'm very grateful for the messages I receive from people that talk about impacts that songs that I've written have had, and humbled by them. And if they've been positive influences in people's lives, that's a wonderful thing. And yeah, I'm thankful for that. But like in the act of writing, I think it's very important not to think about that kind of thing, because I mean, it would get, I think it would start sounding fake very quickly. Do you know what I mean? I think that there are songs that sound like they've been written in order to like impact people, and they tend to sound awful. Do you know what I mean? And like in a way, it's like a magic eye. You've got to look at it by not looking at it. It's like the reason it lands is because it wasn't trying to land, almost. You're about to have a very special guest on this podcast, by the way. Here she is. She's come to say hello. So it's and like, I mean, that line, thank you for your words about it, is an example. I mean, I was nervous about that line in many ways, and what happened to Scott and suicide as a broad concept is a very complex thing. And one of the things that I react to very strongly in a negative way is this sort of suggestion there's some kind of cowardice involved in it. I mean, for a start, it requires an awful lot of bravery to take such a kind of sovereign action with regard to yourself. But also, I knew Scott well enough to know that he struggled a lot with a lot of things, and I'm so sad about what happened to him, and I so wish it didn't happen every day. But at the same time, Scott didn't trip and fall into what happened to him. He knew precisely and exactly what he was doing. And I have to believe on some level that he found some peace in that, because otherwise it's almost too much to bear, you know? But I mean, and not only do I have to not think about what other people think about it when you're writing a line like that, you have to kind of just not think about it full stop, because I think if you're analyzing while you write, then you'll trip yourself over. Yeah. And that was a song. A large chunk of that song arrived in a very lucid dream that I had about a conversation with Scott, which involved him also playing me some chords on the guitar, which are the chords of the song. And that's weird. And I'm almost uncomfortable saying that out loud, but that is what happened. Yeah. But like, you know, it was just, people talk about the technique of automatic writing. It's not quite that, but it is definitely the case of just don't second guess this while it's flowing. Do you know what I mean? Just let it go, let it go. He said, quoting Frozen for some reason. But yeah, you know, so there has to be a kind of like, almost a detachment from your cautious mind whilst you write.
But yeah, no, that line, because I can see it from my point of view, from when I was younger and I was in that place where Scott was, and that when you're finally escaping that really, yeah, it's a very powerful line, and yeah, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
But we've pretty much run out of time already.
You and I do this every time I talk to you. We do this. I know. We should. I don't know if Jess is still listening. Jess, next time we do this, let's do longer with Simon. Anyway, continue.
I have a quick story, because I love and respect you. And I've loved and respected your music for years, and obviously we've spoken for many years now, and I find you not only just an incredible musician, but also an incredible person. And that's not because I just love your music.
If only you knew.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I met someone last year who is a sound engineer who has worked with you several times.
Right.
Nick.
Oh, Lord. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He was at a wedding that I was at, because he's actually my friend's brother-in-law. And
oh, very nice.
I love and respect you so much, because you actually do what you say. Like you don't just say like you want to make things better. You go out and do it. Like, you cancelled the tour. The next day you did a live stream for your crew, which is an amazing thing to do. You did the live streams to the venues. No one else really did much like that. You did, off your own back, and it's amazing. And he said when he was on tour with you once, everyone was stressed to the rafters, and you had a bit of downtime, so you did everyone's washing just off your own back, just to help them all out, and it lifts them all up. That is the sort of thing which just makes you an incredible person, because it's just when he told me, I was like, it's a wonderful little story, and I was like, I'm going to bring that up.
I had forgotten about that. It is a true story. Could you do me a favour and not tell my wife that story, because she will be livid at the suggestion that I do other people's washing, because as the song The Work mentions, laundry is a point of contention in our marriage. Yes. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, you've got to, one of the things I've learned over the many years is that like there are often times a successful tour is as much about kind of like personnel management. I mean, that sounds naff, but like people get stressed with each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, go paintballing. Do you know what I mean? Like, go to the beach on your day off. Do something other than just sit in a van staring at each other, for the love of God. But that's very sweet to hear from Nick.
Yeah. Right. Well, that is it. Obviously, FTHC is out on the 11th of February, and it is incredible. I've listened to it, I reckon, about 15 or 16 times since I was sent it.
Thank you.
And I love it. Cannot wait to hear it. Also, we'll get information on the tour when it's announced again, and we will see you.
Yes, it'll be. Yeah, you certainly will. We will get it back on the books as soon as that's possible to do. I mean, the one solace for me at the moment is that I'm not the only artist dealing with this right now. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, we'll get there when it's safe and when everyone's ready for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll catch up again when you're in Southampton. And, yeah, as always,
I can't wait.
I love you. And I cannot wait for other people to hear this album, because it is so... It's fucking amazing. And I know I have to cut that because of swearing, but it's awesome.
Thank you very much, my friend. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I will see you in Southampton.
See you in Southampton. Bye.